Hello and welcome to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efraín Martinez. I am a principal in search of wisdom, and I have found productivity to be a great tool for success. Today, I have the great and distinguished honor of interviewing Sara Loretta, who is a founder, workflow strategist, and the 10th certified Notion consultant in the US. When she is not teaching people about building digital workspaces for business globally, she shares advice on how to run freelance business more strategically via YouTube and X, previously Twitter. She has a fascinating life story of perseverance and success, and it's quite an honor to have her on the show. Sara Loretta, who are you?
Hi. That was a great intro. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah. So like you said, I am a certified Notion consultant. I own a consulting agency, but my business is a little different than I think a lot of agencies are because I'm 100% productized. So I'm not writing custom contracts, not writing custom proposals, and basically anyone can come on as a client at any point. You can pay me out a retainer right on my website or book a sales call and talk through things. So that's that side. But yeah, my career, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about this, but I didn't set out to be a freelancer. I didn't set out to own a business. I thought I was going to be in the nonprofit space for a very long time. And I very much believe that I think a lot of you guys listening will hear in our conversation today that I believe in pivoting when pivoting hits you in the face. And as long as it feels good, why not take the leap and go for whatever's coming after you? And so I've definitely had a long career in the past 12, 13 years that I've started my career. But it's been exciting. And I look forward to kind of seeing what is next, but I'm living in the moment and seeing what experience I can get from it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Sarah, traditionally, I ask people to tell me their origin story about
Yeah,
their professional trajectory. But when I was
sure.
reading at your website and the interviews out there, I see you have a story to share about perseverance.
Mm,
And it relates to you growing up and your
mhm,
family. And as an educator,
mhm.
for me, so important that we see that side of people have been able to beat the odds and be able to persevere in life. Can you share with us what is that story?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm definitely, I think one of the good attributes about myself, if that's what we want to say, is that I think that there's value in every story and every experience. And I really don't believe in putting knowledge behind a paywall. One of my missions is to make business education affordable and inclusive and accessible, but also how we get there, right? Because especially like my story, I I'm always like, I don't know where I start with this. But yeah, like I grew up in Cleveland and I was kind of raised in a middle class household. Very detrimental to say the least. My mom gave up custody when I was 8. And then I grew up in a very abusive household with my dad and my stepmom. Ended up running away at 15. Only time I've ever been in a cop car, any kind of like remote trouble. But yeah, I was a runaway at 15. Didn't think I would live to see 18. My dad ended up going to prison for everything. He's still there today. And, through all of that, it was kind of like the second I turned 15 and made that decision, it was almost like that is when I became an adult, right? I would no longer had anybody I could rely on. It was either make this choice or make this choice. And in that moment, I look back and through my entire career, my life choices, I think that's really the only moment I've ever been able to say, I don't know what's going to come next. And so long story short, what had happened is based on like family drama and different things like that. It was either I go back to live with my mom, who I hadn't seen in 8, 9 years, or I go into foster care. And knowing, my dad grew up in foster care, you hear all of these horrible stories about, foster parents and what kids go through. And you hear these stories about kids just living out of plastic trash bags, right? And I definitely knew that if I was going to make that choice, I would probably never ever see any of my family again. I would never find contact with them again. And I really didn't understand what my life would be like had I made that decision. And so ultimately, I ended up deciding to go move in with my mom, moved cross country to Dallas, didn't even know Texas had grass. Like that was the experience I moved into. And yeah, from that second, I started working full time. I had 3 jobs in high school because I knew that I could not rely on anybody moving forward, right? When I made that decision and became an adult and had to stand up for the decisions I made, I had to then follow through, right? And so, kind of the next piece that came with that is at 18, me and my mom, not a great relationship. Those 2 years were real rough living together. And so at 18, she looked at me and said, "Hey, I think it's time for you to move out." And I said, "Bye, I'm out. I'm good. That is great. Thanks." And so I ended up at that point having a family friend who had done AmeriCorps. And for those listening who don't know what AmeriCorps is, it's basically a government program. That's the easiest way to explain it. It's a government contract. You're the lowest level of the government. Think like GS level 1. And it's 10 months. You can go and do conservation work. You can do grant work, go into education. And so at 18, I packed up my bags, moved to Austin, and I taught K through 5 STEM for 2 years. It was one of the greatest times of my life because it was strange because, and we've talked about this too in calls we've been in, is that, growing up in white, quote unquote, middle class America, I didn't really understand a lot about life. Even with a parent incarcerated, I had no idea about struggle or about what people actually go through, right? Because when we think about the media and we think about the ways in which we are educated on different income classes and even different education levels, right? We really don't know until we're put in that situation. And I think doing AmeriCorps at 18, 19 years old, 18 to 20 rather, was probably the best developmental years I could have ever asked for because I learned about, kids and what free and reduced lunch looks like and what kids who don't have parents to go home to at the end of the day, and how do we expect them to even do homework, right? Like they don't even know what they're going to eat for dinner yet. We expect so much of these kids. And to be totally honest, AmeriCorps changed my life. I tell everybody that if you don't know what you want to do, if you don't have money for school, go get some life experience, do AmeriCorps. You could move to LA for a year. You could move to Florida. Like you can do this program anywhere in the United States. I mean, Austin alone, I think we have like 26 AmeriCorps programs, which is insane. And so I did that. It paid for my first 2 years of undergrad, went to community college, then transferred to a state school outside of Austin. And, and then started my life basically. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to school for history. I wanted to work at the Smithsonian. That was my dream. Especially because at that time I'd really gotten into music and really started diving deep into how people in the hip hop industry, rappers, musicians, R&B artists are actually covering inner city history, right? You're not looking at mainstream media and learning about what kids in the Bronx are going through or learning about what kids in Kansas City are going through. You're hearing that through speakers. And so that is what I had my heart dead set on. I was like, I'm going to go be a music historian. That was my thing. Couldn't find a job. And so I ended up sticking with the nonprofit that I worked at during AmeriCorps, rather volunteered at while I was in AmeriCorps. And they kept me on. I was a data assistant, moved up, started doing communications and marketing and video, fell in love with it. It's just like a different angle of storytelling. And then I couldn't find another job. I was the youngest person on staff by a good 8, 9 years. I was there for 7 years on payroll and couldn't find another job, was being bullied by senior team members. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go do what I'm doing here for our partners who I know don't have somebody doing marketing, which, I look back and it was super petty, right? But I honestly, I wouldn't be here had I not been like, hey, let me go do this. And so my first 6 months of freelancing, I landed 40 clients and I've been full time. It'll be 5 years in about 2 weeks since we're recording, which is wild to think about. So it's been a
Wow.
long time, but you know what? I opened a design agency and, was doing video and marketing and branding. And I started getting clients who thought that logos were going to fix everything. Obviously, not the case. And so, another full circle moment, I sat here and I said, oh, let me pull the business development and the data skills that I got at this day job and help people actually run their business. And that's kind of where I'm at today is I decided to shut all the design stuff down, dive fully into tech consulting and processes and operations. And I have never been happier. So that is my
Wow.
trajectory.
What a story. Thank you. Very inspirational. A couple of follow-up questions.
Mm-hmm.
You are 15 and
Mm-hmm.
somehow against the odds you did not give up.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a figure, a person, something you read, or it was just innate that you decided, you know what, I'm just gonna move forward and not
Mm-hmm.
look back? Any reflections on that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how deep we want to go. But
As deep
about a
as you want.
year, yeah, about I would say probably 9 months, maybe a year before that, I did try to commit suicide. But I was so afraid that I was going to be found before I died. And so, and it's super horrible to say all that, but it's the truth, right? And so, my house from that moment had gotten so astronomically bad after that situation that I didn't think I was going to live to see 18. I really didn't. And so at that moment there was I don't even remember really what had kind of triggered it. But that night I had, been flown, I was thrown down a flight of stairs, had broken jaw, I had bruises everywhere. And I was like, either I'm going to die in this house or I need to go. Right. And so I took my stepmom's flip flops. I left a note and I ran out the back door. And I look back now and it's so dramatic, right? Like, I mean, you have to do what you have to do. But I look back and I'm like, who was that? Like, I really don't know even to this day, like where kind of that light switch clicked for having that kind of confidence. But I will say that the repercussions of that, I didn't really have anyone to turn to. Cleveland police didn't believe me. People at the hospital didn't believe me. It was a very dark time because I didn't realize and I wasn't educated at that point that, the police aren't to be trusted and they're problematic. And I don't think all police are, but, in my situation, for someone who never had even talked to a police officer in her life ever to hear like, oh, girls like you run away for attention all the time. What do you mean? Like, I was so in a bubble. I went to Catholic school. Like, I wasn't allowed to watch like Disney Channel after 7 o'clock, And so I really didn't have anybody to look to. And I think even now, I hear sometimes like, oh, you shouldn't tell people your business. You shouldn't, be harping on this. Like, just let it go, right? But I look at myself and it's like, I didn't know that I was one in 28 kids who have a parent incarcerated. I didn't know how regularly this happens to people. And if I can be, I don't want to say like, oh, I'm this guiding light, right? I'm not trying to be like this like beacon of somebody to look up to, but I do think looking at the statistics and things that I am kind of a different study in the fact that I ended up putting myself through college. I own a business. I haven't necessarily let it define me other than saying I don't want to be my parents, right? That's always been kind of my like pessimistic side coming out is like, no, I will not be there. And even to this day, like, I don't really have anybody on that side of my life where I'm like, yeah, I look up to you because you made strong decisions like I had to. Because I don't think a lot of people talk about their experiences, and not to say they have to, but it's made healing very difficult for me, for sure.
Thank
So
you so much for sharing. And I
yeah.
concur with you that it's so important to talk about these things because there are
Mhm.
many people listening and maybe for sure not listening who don't have someone to turn and say, this is happening to me. It has happened and it's taking over my life. And it is like examples like the one you were saying of perseverance that give hope to other people. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing. So I am very interested. Can you share with us more about your journey with hip hop and the music that is
Mhm.
sharing the history of what is happening in the cities?
Mhm.
Can you share more about that?
Yeah. So I think for me, I think about like Bone Thugs and Harmony from Cleveland, and I think about Akon, and I think about, 3 6 Mafia, and a lot, they're from the Midwest, but then I think about Houston and Slim Thug and all of these people and Killa Leon who have spent their entire careers like, yes, sure, they do drugs and they drink and, they talk about, things that are explicit. But if you really truly dive into a lot of their records, that's really about brutality and income division and just regular problems that people shouldn't necessarily be dealing with. And I can't remember, I don't know if it was Bone Thugs or if it was, I don't remember who was like the first artist, but I was listening to someone. I had to have been maybe 18, maybe 17. And my dad had already been arrested and put in jail. And I remember hearing a song and I was like, oh, like people every day go to prison. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was that sheltered of a child that I didn't realize that it was like just another Tuesday that this happened to so many people. And I started hearing my situation in a lot of the music I was listening to. Um, and then I just started diving deeper and deeper. And then I would say probably around the time of the Ferguson protests, I was a senior in college and I had to pick a thesis. And so, looking at that and hearing Kilo Leon had just put out Lorraine Motel, which was his entire album about how he believes that the Black Dream died when MLK was assassinated. And I've always been fascinated with Memphis and civil rights and things like that. And I decided like that was going to be my thesis. I was going to talk about, why are we waiting to hear a year or two after an album drops to hear about what happened in somebody's neighborhood? And why do we have to only hear it if you're choosing to put on that record to really learn about people's lives? And so yeah, that was a big piece of it, was just diving in and learning more about myself. It helped me really reflect on who I was and just how weird, I guess, but also like regular my situation is. I'm not anything special, right? Um but yeah, it honestly, like, I don't think I would be who I am and be so willing to hear and listen and learn had I not been through that period of my time trying to find my own answers, you know?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And then now you're this person who is being asked for interviews and having this business. Why
Sure.
why why systems? Tell us about that.
About the company name?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So my original business was called 99 in St. Clair. That's my LLC, named after an intersection in Cleveland. Bone Thugs and Harmony made it famous. That's part of their original album. They have a whole song after it. And, obviously, if you're watching video, I have like a Cleveland sign on my wall. Like, very proud. I'm 10th generation Ohioan, very proud to be from Cleveland. Feel free to talk about it in the comments, I guess, if you want to make fun of our sports teams or something. But yeah, and so I actually had a client a year ago. I guess no, probably almost 2 years ago now, that had asked me to actually start a company with them and do what I'm doing now, but only basically be a third owner. And we were brainstorming names. I really wanted to go with something tech that stood out, that wasn't so necessarily specific in one way that if I ended up pivoting, like 99 in St. Clair is such a long name, right? Like, I feel like that screams like branding studio or something. But in this transition, I wanted a business name that ironically was what I do, but also could pivot a little more broadly. And, everybody in tech is doing this thing where it's like one word or, no vowels. And so I was just, when I said no to this company wanting to start a company with me, I went back when I was rebranding and looking at the names. I'm like, system sounds dope. Like it just sounds cool. Like everything has a system. Your entire business is an ecosystem. You have systems and processes, and all of this goes into this larger idea, right? And I really think, you know, in kind of a selfish way, I am the backbone to a lot of companies that I work with, right? They're hiring me because they don't have the right brain skill set. They just want to do the deliverables, they want to create great stuff and be left alone. And I really come in as kind of the spine of their business. And so, yeah, I think systems is fun. I think it's cool. It rolls off the tongue like my name does, and that's it.
Love it. Thank you so much. So,
Yeah.
Sarah, like in Back to the Future, if you
Mhm.
could go back to any point on your professional trajectory, what would the
Mhm.
Sarah of today tell the Sarah of back then?
Oh gosh, there's a lot. I think, hmm, okay, so there's one thing, and I don't want to necessarily say I'd have to change this, but I think knowing where I'm at now and how it doesn't really matter, I think the way that I pushed myself through undergrad. So I was taking 7 classes a semester, working full time. Like I was like, I need this degree so I can go do other things. Because in our generation, everyone was like, you don't matter unless you have a college degree. No,
Correct.
you're never going to get a high paying job unless you have a degree. Even the nonprofit I worked at, I was an assistant, and then I was, what was my title? I went from data assistant to um com- uh compliance manager. It was like data and media manager. I don't know, whatever. None of that matters anymore. But even them, they were like, we're not giving you a raise until you get your degree. Like you have to have a bachelor's in order to be a manager. And I'm like, why? I've been working here 6 years. Why does it matter? I have 4 interns. Who cares, right? And so I think that would be the first thing, is not caring so much about my degree. I loved undergrad. I loved learning. I loved being in Socratic seminars and sitting and reading, but I didn't need to break my back over it. I could have taken 5, 6 years to graduate. No one would have cared, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing I will say is I wish that I would have found my backbone a little sooner. And I say that because when I owned my design agency, like everybody's kind of knows me. I'm kind of known for my quote unquote asshole boundaries and my asshole policies. It's a lot of the content I talk about is really how to hold your ground as a freelancer. And it took me a while to get here. It took being sued. It took somebody illegally pulling my credit report. It took a client threatening me and giving me chargebacks for me to be able to understand, like, no one can take advantage of me. I already did the hard work 15 years ago when I moved out on my own and did all these things. So why can't I find that? Why am I so afraid of clients? Like, come on, right? And so I wish I would have learned how to hold my ground and not let, I mean, every so often clients kind of get to me still when things don't go right. But I wish I would have learned how to maneuver that stuff a little sooner, you know?
I see. What makes a good client?
Oh, a good client. Oh my gosh. I will say my best clients are the clients who ask questions, who, yes, obviously you know your business, but when you are hiring out, when you're contracting an expert in, you're doing it because you either don't have the skill set, you don't know, or you don't have the time, right? And so I think my best clients are the ones who are like, you are the expert. I trust you. Do what you need to do, but are also interested enough to ask questions and also learn the process. Um, those are going to be my best clients. I think the other ones who aren't so, like, how do I say it? I want to almost like tunnel visioned on one specific outcome and not realizing, hey, there's so many other factors that can go into what makes a successful launch or a project, and are willing to kind of, I don't want to say take a jump or take a risk, but are willing to pivot or, let the lines get a little zigzagged in order to get to an even better finish line. Yeah, those are some of my best clients. And I'll also say this is also one of my asshole boundaries. I work well with people who have contracted out before. Those are my best clients because they understand timelines, they understand the invoicing, they understand the process. So yeah, those are what makes my good clients.
Beautiful. Do you find yourself automatizing many of these procedures, or
Yeah.
is it more hands-on talking to people?
Yeah, so I will say since I became a productized agency, I now live by the model that you do once, you templatize forever. Because you obviously a strategy session is going to be hands-on, right? Conversations are a human element to any project. And you have to be able to read between the lines, right? Like, yes, anybody can do a questionnaire, you can automate that and ship that out. But you have to be able to be a listener. And so like one thing I automated that has changed my life. I don't care what tech budget you have, pay for a note-taking AI app. It has changed the way that I interact with my clients, especially during strategy sessions, because mine are 3 hours long. We sit for 3 hours and we are like hammering into your business. And so now I don't have to sit here, type notes, and listen. I can literally just look at you, hear what you're saying, ask follow-up questions, and the note-taking app handles it all. But I will say, other than that, I have automated pretty much everything. I did a video not too long ago before I switched to a productized model. My onboarding process would only ever take me 15 minutes max because I quit writing custom proposals, custom contracts a long time ago. Those were templatized by offer. And now that I have one SKU, one offer, people literally go to the sales page, click join, and it takes them to a Stripe checkout, and the rest is automated. So that's really, even that. And then like Notion builds, I have all of my internal templates that I just customize a little bit. But yeah, and I'm knocking out projects. I mean, now on the productized side, I have some clients who, need obviously different things than another. I have a client right now who is separating her business from her business partner. And so I'm doing a lot of kind of reset up, right? We're shifting things from their shared account into new accounts. So that's like much more hands on. Whereas I have a client right now, another client who just needs a Notion workspace. So it's like, okay, we did strategy. Let me pick the templates I need, figure out what needs to be customized, and boom, you're out the door in 4 days,
Wow.
So it really just depends on what the deliverables are.
Beautiful. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I can't wait to talk about Notion and YouTube.
Yeah.
But let me ask you, reading books are a luxury. If you
Mhm.
had to gift two books, one
Mhm.
fiction and one nonfiction, to a loved one, which
Mhm.
books would those be?
Yeah, so every year, like clockwork, I read Kitchen Confidential from Anthony Bourdain. I also love to cook. I always say as a joke when my business is not doing well that I'm going to shut it all down and go to culinary school. That's another conversation for another day. I love cooking. It's like, when you have a hobby that you're like everybody thinks you should create content on and put your personality around. That is one hard rule I will never do. Yeah, every so often I
Mm,
post stuff, but I will never monetize my love for the kitchen. So, Kitchen Confidential, Anthony Bourdain, it's his first book. It's about him kind of coming up, in the 1980s in New York around heroin and him, doing drugs and all these things while also finding his footing and his love for food and working his way into Lay Hall. I If you could eat with anybody, I would love to have dinner with Anthony Bourdain, and specifically the audiobook because he reads it. And so you can actually hear him talk about his experiences, which I prefer when I read a memoir to actually listen to the reader. But I will say fiction. I haven't read a good fiction book in a while, but mainly because I'm so particular with audiobooks. If I don't like the narrator, I can't get through it. But I will say I have a huge bookshelf behind me. Um, for fiction, I'm trying to think. I don't even know. Um, I mean, nope. See, that's a biography too. I read so many real stories. I really do. I guess one fiction you could say, I don't know if you ever read A Million Little Pieces. It's by James Fry,
Yeah,
and he
the
wrote it
scandal
as
with Oprah.
yes,
Yeah,
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 he
yeah,
wrote it
yeah.
as an autobiography, but then Oprah got him on the show and he was like, "It's not real." I love that book and they've turned it into a movie and I will say that's one of the very few book to film adaptations that I thought they did very well. But I love that book too. Only thing I ever
Amazing.
stole. I started reading it at a YMCA and took it home and never returned it.
That's a good steal. That's a good steal.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds good. So, among many, I'm sure, who is or
Mhm.
who are your biggest influences?
Ugh, personally or business wise?
It's up to you.
Okay. I will say personal influences. Anthony Bourdain, obviously, we've already mentioned him. I also too.
But why Anthony?
I think I really just have always admired how raw and real he is, and that's something that I've also tried to emulate in my life. Is like nobody's perfect. Everybody has their problems, and you're not doing anybody any kind of service by not sharing real life things. And so I've always really appreciated that about him. I also have a soft spot because I met him what year was it? 2014 here at South by Southwest. He was premiering Parts Unknown and it was this whole like CNN party. It was awesome. Um so Anthony Bourdain, I also really, really admire Sophia Bush, and particularly because I think as a woman, we are always taught, do what you got to do, keep your legs crossed, be kind, watch your mouth, all these things. And I feel like Sophia is somebody in my generation that is unapologetically herself, in especially being vocal in what she believes in and what she stands for. And I think that that's something that I do personally and more silently, and I wish that I did a little bit more like she does, that I would be more vocal about things that I believe in, and like not necessarily using my platform, but using my platform on a day-to-day basis, not saying like to the masses, but being more involved with things that progress us as a society. So Sophia's great. Business wise, everybody's going to hate me for saying this, but I don't care. I quit paying attention to people in business a long time ago. And I say that because, especially as a newer freelancer, it can be so easy to compare somebody's chapter 5 to your chapter 1, especially like to in the design space specifically. There's so much competition and your portfolio is always there being judged, and I don't like feeling like I'm not doing enough. Like I look at some creators on Twitter/X, whatever we're calling it these days, and I'm like, God, like I wish I would make more content. I wish I could do this or I wish I could do that. And I very much get in that like negative judgment space. But then I'm sitting here going, I had a $46,000 month last year and I didn't put out a single video. So clearly I'm doing something right. you know but yeah, I quit, and I've bought everybody's books. I bought Tiago's book. I bought everybody. I have all of them. But everybody says the same thing. So it's like, why continue to read this content and put yourself in this space that you're not creating 100% for yourself? Because the more you take in, the less, oh God, and this word makes me want to cringe. I hate the word authentic. It's like the word moist to me. Like, oh, I don't like it. It just makes me feel gross. But the more you listen to other people's content, the more your content looks like their content, and you lose that piece of yourself. And so when I got serious about, I have 3 newsletters. I'm doing like at least one video a month on my channel. I was like, I have to stop. I have to stop looking at stuff. I have to stop scrolling, or I'm not going to give my audience what they need 100%, because I'm listening to other people. I'm not listening to my audience. So I don't really have anybody. And even when I started freelancing, maybe Johnny Cupcakes. I mean, I don't know if you know who that is.
No.
So he owns Johnny Cupcakes is a t-shirt brand, and the logo is a cupcake with crossbones underneath it. And it was kind of like a cult following. Like most of my friends I met through Johnny Cupcake forums online. And he just like does limited drops. So he'll make like 200 t-shirts of one design, and when they're out, they're out. Like that's it. And he was the first person that I was like, oh, anybody could be an entrepreneur. Like, I thought to be an entrepreneur, you had to be like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg. Like, I didn't know that little Sara from the 440 could start a business. Like, I had no idea. So yeah, you just got to pave your own way, that's it.
Fascinating. Sarah, you are fascinating. Let's take a quick pause to celebrate the Teach Better community.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
So when you were saying about all those people out there and all their books and at least in my case, sometimes I feel what I'm doing is not enough. It's not good enough. I need to do this and more. So how do you address imposter syndrome?
God, I feel like an imposter every day. I think for me, I really tap into what does my audience need right now and what is the minimum viable that I can give them to make sure that I'm showing up. Even if it's, if I set out to say, I want to write this long essay about, I don't know, I'm trying to pick a topic off the top. I'm really bad at like off the cusp things. That's not a skill set I have. But like, I don't know, client onboarding, right? I want to do this entire workbook about client onboarding, but given my schedule, like right now I have 14 active clients. And so there's probably no time to write this elaborate thing, but what can I give them right now to make me feel like I fulfilled what they signed up for, but they're also getting something. So that's a huge component of it is taking the smaller steps to not bite off more than I can chew, which I have a very bad habit of doing, that I have never learned how to say no, but it also hasn't been horrible for me yet. I'm just a little tired. But yeah, and I think too, be making sure you're in the right rooms, I think is really important. For a long time I was chasing like, oh, I've got to be in this community or I've got to be in that one. I've got to spend all this money, right? Like 2 years ago, I spent 17 grand on a business coach that I got zero anything from, because I was like, oh, I need to be in the 7-figure club because I'm basically, that's my next step. I need to be there. But then mentally I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm not ready for that yet. And that's okay. But what can I do right now to still feel fulfilled? I think is really important to me. And taking every day at a time. Like I don't set goals. I'm not sitting here going, okay, I'm going to make 6 figures this year. Which is crazy. Like I look back, I've been freelancing 5 years. I've never made it more of a goal except to make sure my bills are paid every month and that I can like have some money to do whatever I want. But I've never been like, I have to make 10K months. I have to make 100 grand. I have to have, this massive team and do all of these things. And that I think has really helped me stay grounded and not feel like I'm, in this space that I don't belong,
For sure. And I like that because often people put a goal of money or followers and then they lose the fun of the activity. And when you do it day to day, then you end up hating it and you usually leaving it because you don't meet that goal of that God that is waiting for you at the end of the line, instead of focusing on what is that you want to do. So,
well, and it's like, why are you, just because the industry is saying you only matter if you make 10K months? First of all, I think that that's complete bullshit. I don't know who created that mantra that you have to earn 10K months. And even on Twitter now, it's, oh, you're not successful unless you're making 20K months or 30K. It's like, why? People in middle America who aren't paying astronomical rent like I am here in Austin don't need that money like to afford to live. Like, yes, inflation and things are getting more expensive, but on a day-to-day level, it's okay to only make 5K a month or to freelance just to pay off your student loans. I know several people that do that just to pay off one thing or another. And yeah, I wish I could like make it my mission to end that mantra. I really wish like I'm not saying violence, right? But like I wish I could just throw a pie at whoever I did, like just smash their face in a pie, you know, to be like, why did you think that this was good advice? Why? You know?
So one of those people that paints that picture is
Mhm.
someone that you and I have followed is Ali Abdal, you know, who with
Yeah.
the Part Timers YouTuber Academy, which I
Yeah.
thought of joining, and I learned from you that you joined. Can you tell us your experience and perhaps one glow and one grow of
Sure.
the
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah. I mean, listen, everybody's experience is valid. How they get to where they are today is valid. However, I think that in coming educator to educator, I taught K through 5, also did adult workforce. So I feel like I have enough experience to talk about learning channels. I think that there are several freelancers who are selling courses that have never taught a day in their life and don't understand learning. What is the right word? Is it learning channel or
Pedagogy,
learn?
pedagogy.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think the thing is, especially right as COVID was hitting, courses became sexy. Everybody and their sister has a course. Everybody and their sister is a coach in some form or capacity. That was the passive income of choice during COVID. Valid, fine. People have made hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the problem I have alongside of that is how easy it is to market and sell a course that barely goes surface level. Like if we think about like the learning pyramid of like an iceberg, right? You just have the little bit of a tip above the water and then you can go so much further deep. I think there are a lot of freelancers who have courses who, because they lack the education skill set to teach in different varieties, I think that they are afraid to go deeper and truly deliver very good learning content. And I say that a lot of people. I know we're talking about Part-Time YouTuber Academy, but I have taken several courses. I've been a part of several communities, and that is the consensus I have, just as someone who was a teacher. So specifically, to branch off of that with Part-Time YouTuber Academy, I sat in that live workshop that Ali Abdal did before he opened the doors, because that's a whole nother thing we could talk about another day. I think that that's bullshit, but whatever. He did this whole live call. You know, there were hundreds and hundreds of people sitting in this live call on his YouTube channel where he was like, if you have X experience, you will be great for this course. If you don't have X experience, you're not going to be great. And so sitting here, someone who has had a YouTube channel for 10 years at this point, I was the first AmeriCorps YouTuber. So when I started AmeriCorps, no one was making content about it except for the government, right? And it was these like super dramatic scripted videos that was propaganda to get you to join. But I was the first person to sit here and say, I am 18. I have never done anything. I did AmeriCorps. Here's how to use your education award. You automatically qualify for food stamps. Like I was educating people on it. And still to this day, I live in the same neighborhood I have for 12 years being in Austin. Every like once a year still, someone comes up to me at the grocery store and looks me in the eye and goes, I joined AmeriCorps because of you, which is the weirdest thing in the world. It is very uncomfortable, but it happens. And so, you know, I've had my YouTube channel. I know how to produce video. I know how to do all these things. And I got into PTYA and it was like, why am I taking a workshop on how to edit a video? Why are we talking about these things? Because you said in the marketing call you needed to have these skills in order to be successful in this program. And so me and kind of the friend group I had started from there's about 3 of us now, where we're all like, this is such a waste of time. Like, we wanted to know how to do better titles. We wanted to know how to A/B test thumbnails. And everything was so hypothetical. It wasn't, here's these tools that you can use like vidIQ or TubeBuddy. Yeah, I was so disappointed. And I'll say too, I think that I've also realized I don't do well with that group of productivity people like Tiago, Ali. Like, I just think it's all bullshit. I really do. I think that everyone preaches the exact same thing. No one's creating revolution ideas in our space. And that was kind of my thing where I was like, I'm done spending money in this community because it wasted my time, you know?
Thank
So,
you. Thank you for sharing. I was going to
sorry,
invest
guys.
all my
Please don't hate
savings.
me.
But
Please
when
don't
we had
hate
that
me.
conversation, I was like, let me
Yeah.
wait. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mhm.
And quick correction, pedagogy is the how children learn,
Yes.
andragogy. And I'm sorry, andragogy is how adults learn. So correction
Yes.
there.
Yes. Thank you for
Beautiful.
that. Yeah.
So
Now, I
I
will say, just to
tell me.
clarify, I did just join VRA from Think Media. I did join their program, but specifically because I know it has what I didn't get from PTYA. There are several, they teach you how to A/B test. They teach you how to read the analytics on your YouTube channel. And I've been in there like a month, and I think I'm paying like $97 a month for, I don't know, 6 months or something. Like, it wasn't expensive. And I'm already seeing results with stuff that I've done from that. So like, I know that that's valid, but PTY, it's like, I'm good. I'm good.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I truly admire your videos and pictures of your
Thanks.
working space.
Oh, sure.
It looks so fancy.
It
How's
doesn't right
your
now because I'm at a weird angle, but
tell us about how the evolution of your working space. How you have this standing
sure.
table, what walking thing.
Oh, my
What should we
walking
know?
pad. Yeah. God,
Yeah.
that
What?
video is going to be the bane of my existence. It hits at least 12K views every month. That
Wow.
YouTube short that I did, I'm just like, doesn't convert to anything else, guys. Like, stop watching this video. Anyway, so I'm trying to think. So I lived before my partner and I got together. I've had roommates. I lived on my own for a very long time. And so I always kind of just like had a kitchen table kind of space. But when I really started freelancing, my partner at the time was doing music, and we were in a tiny little like one bedroom, right? And his desk was in one corner and my stuff was in another corner. And I was like, I cannot focus. Like, when I love you, you're home. Like, I need my own space. And so we started looking for this apartment. We've been here like 4 years, I think now, three full years. And I was like, I need an office, because if I'm going to take video seriously, if I'm going to, start really showing up as a leader and an expert in what I do every single day, like, I need to be able to close the door. And two, like, I have a very harsh rule. I don't work outside of this room unless I'm on my patio, because in Texas, we get really beautiful weather in the mornings. It's so hot. I come in here, so I try to get as much fresh air as I can. But I really wanted this space, honestly, to be more of a reflection of all the stuff I love. So like I'm trying to think. Yeah, like all of my art, like I'm trying to think how I can. Okay. So the puzzle, this is actually a puzzle, the New York Times front cover of the day I was born. I've got custom art from Arturo Torres on here, who he did all of the books for Shea Serrano. And Shea Serrano is the first Hispanic man to have more than 3 New York Times bestseller books. He was a teacher. He now writes these really cool kind of deep dives and looking at different questions about things like hip hop and sports and basketball. So Arturo did all of his art. So all of like the Basketball Man and God, this is really bad to like point backwards. It's very difficult actually. Like all the cartoon stuff is Arturo. And then I have all of my record collection. So I'm a huge Hall & Oates fan. You can't see it here. Yeah, here we go. Here's more of my background. So I have like all of my Hall & Oates records I've been collecting over the years. So I really just I wanted to create a space that I felt inspired by, but also that I feel safe in, to really make mistakes and think for myself. And again, like being able to close the door and be like, I fucked up today. I did not make a good decision, or, this client hates me today, or, whatever it is. And so, yeah, that's been the trajectory, and I really love it. And I feel like I finally got this part where my desk is. I've got 2 screens, I've got my white lights, I've got my camera and my mic. And so it was really important, in this new kind of era, if you will, that I could just sit down and film a video and not have to think about it. I could sit down and be creative, and it's all here. So that's my
Gorgeous.
space. Yeah.
When you create videos, what is your process
Sure.
for, first of all, when you go in the zone, do you listen
Mhm.
to music, or do you do any
Yes.
what do you do?
Yeah. Okay. So I very much have, I would say, addictive personalities with music. So recently on YouTube, no, it's been a couple of months now, I found somebody had, do you remember the Weather Channel? Like 20 years ago would just loop through all the cities and the weather, and they'd play kind of that like jazzy
Yes.
elevator kind of stuff. Okay. So the genre is called vaporwave. So VAPOR wave. And it's kind of this like synth 80s elevator music. It's like a little bit upbeat, but not distracting upbeat. So, anyway, so I found this basically Weather Channel recording, and that's all I listened to all day, every day. It's like 2-hour video on YouTube. I'll send it to you later.
Please.
But and it's so nice because I've listened to it so much that I know, like, they had some stuff cut in of like Al Roker, like talking to people, and so I know, okay, like the Al Roker part's coming up, like I can take a 5-minute
Take a
break,
break.
yeah. And so that's the music I listen to, because especially like audiobooks, podcasts, I can't listen while I work because I actually want to listen to the content. And if I'm working, I'm not paying attention to that. So those are like, that's what I listen to like on walks or whatever. But even like words, I can't really do music with words anymore. Like I can't think if I have
Mm,
voices,
I
coming
see.
at me. But yeah, and then to answer your question about kind of getting in the zone for video.
Mhm.
So again, automated process, or rather systematized process. So at all times, I have a database in Notion of content ideas, whether it's going to be a newsletter or it's going to be a video. My goal right now is everything goes into my paid content first. So Workflow of the Month is my paid subscription. It's $17 a month just for the content, or $47 a month for workshops and events and content and stuff like that. So all of my content first and foremost goes in there. Then, unless it's a partnership video, then obviously that goes out. But then I turn it into either video content or public content. So at all times I'm ideating, like, okay, I want to talk about this or I want to do that. And so then I sit and I script. So I script all of my videos. Some of them you can tell until I really learned how to use my teleprompter. But I script everything, and I script so deeply that I know exactly where A-roll cuts are going to go, where B-roll cuts are going to go. If you follow my channel, you know that I put like a film clip in every single video. And even like most of my sales pages also have like a GIF of a movie or something. And that's the name of that movie is always going to be a discount code. That's kind of like a hidden door thing about my brand. And so I cut that in. I know exactly where that's going to go, where my intro is going to go. I've used, actually, my partner, if you listen to my YouTube videos, my intro music where I'm like typing in the search bar, Jesse actually made that beat. So I use his
Mm.
music in every video. And so, yeah, so I know when I sit down to film, everything is mapped out. So I'll script, a couple videos here or there. And then I sit down, I do every video in one take. Sometimes I'll film it a second time if I wasn't really feeling like the energy was there. I slipped up on my words a lot. I just hit re-record and I start over. And then depending on how long the video is, if there's a lot of B-roll, like if I'm showing you a workthrough of how to use Paperform or something, the B-roll is going to take me longer. But a full video start to finish maybe takes me 5 or 6 hours tops. So yeah, I have
Wow.
it pretty down. And I think I didn't really understand scripting for a long time. You know, that is one thing I will say I took from P2IA was you need to script your videos. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And then I started really looking like, okay, I hate, like my thing, this is why I started scripting. I hate editing out my ums. I say
Mm.
a lot. I've never been able to break it from my vocabulary. That and so I've never been able to break it from my vocabulary no matter how hard I try. And for a long time, I used to punish myself and say, you have to sit and edit every single out. And it would take me days to
Forever.
edit a video, forever. And so that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this scripting thing. And I swear by it now. I will say there are some points, like especially if I'm doing a workshop where I'm walking through a piece of tech, I won't necessarily script that as much because it's hard to do a script and then come in and click, and you have to make that part look realistic. But for the most part, 100% scripted, and that has saved my life. So
Beautiful.
mhm.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
when you are not on fire, what do you do for fun?
Oh gosh, for fun. I don't know. No, I will say so. Jesse and I just got some property in Southwest Texas. And so we're currently renovating a camper and building out there. And so we're literally there almost well, me, not him more than me, but I would say like twice a month. I'm at least out there on the river, swimming, playing, all that kind of stuff. I love to cook. I love being in the kitchen and, you know, making pierogies and soups and breads. And then honestly, I know this doesn't sound as exciting. I love film. I love TV. I love watching a good show. And I think I have every right to do that.
Amen. Absolutely.
And so, you know, I watch a lot of content, but really just because I also am writing a novel. And
Ooh.
so I use it as an excuse that I'm watching content so I can be a better writer. But really it's just I love the way that people's brains work. You know, like I'm rewatching Sons of Anarchy right now because my newsletter last week was about Sons of Anarchy. I have this like new passion project called Real Work Ethic where I'm taking a character from TV or film, breaking down their career arc and turning it into teachable freelance moments. It's just like a fun
So
thing. I'm doing it
cool.
on Medium. Yeah, it's really fun. It's like I could go watch something and then write an article about it. And so I've been on this kick. I'm like, I watched the one episode that I was referencing in my article last week, and I was like, okay, I got to rewatch Sons of Anarchy. But I sit here and I'm like, I don't understand like how Kurt Sutter created this world and all the backstory. And like, I know a lot of the show is based on Hell's Angels and, you know, all these motorcycle clubs, but I'm just like, I wish I had that level of creativity. And so I watch these shows and these movies just in awe of these people, you know, and
Yeah.
how they bring their vision to life. And yeah, I don't
I
know.
watch Breaking Bad with my son,
Uh-huh.
and we were talking about how the heck does this guy come up with these stories and all this
Yes.
interconnectedness and goes back and forth, and you have to
Right.
think about so many things. And
Yep.
I for once wanted to be a writer, but you see
Mhm.
stuff like that and you're like, no, I'm a better
Yeah.
podcaster than I'm right.
Right. Well, and you know, it's so funny because I started this book in undergrad. I had to for a class I took, I had to write a pilot TV show. And you know, I had to pick the cast list and you know, whatever. And just like right after I graduated, I needed something to do, right? You're taking 7 class semester, working full time. Like I didn't have hobbies in 2017, you know? And so I picked that back up and I'm like, man, like this is something. I feel like, and I've had an editor from Random House read it. I've had a couple people connected to Hollywood read it, and they're all like, Sarah, you have something. Like, you've got to finish this. And, you know, and I look at all of this and it's just like, man, I look at these other people, I'm like, I don't know how you do it. You know, I feel like I really struggle. And so that's really why like I was really struggling with this book. Like, man, I don't feel like I'm elaborating enough. And I feel like I'm writing too, I don't want to say politically correct, but you know, when you're a history major, they teach you to write in third person and black and white and have no emotion. And, you know, you can't start a sentence with and or but or, you know, And so I was getting that way writing my other articles for my business and writing blog posts about work hubs and creating company wikis. And like, I'm just like, man, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse. And so that's honestly why I started Real Work Ethic, because I'm like, I need to find my footing again. I need to find that like witty oomph that you can't get writing about business, you know? I need to like
Amen.
find my stride again, you know?
Yes, that's why fiction is so important.
Yeah.
Sometimes fiction is more real than the
Yes.
nonfiction.
Yes. I
So
100% agree.
my
I'm just so
final
picky.
question,
Like I don't read
are
enough
you?
fiction. I
Well,
like to
you
watch
know,
it, but I think I just got to get away from audiobooks. They just have been failing me miserably lately, you know?
Kindle. I have been in love with Kindle. You
Me
can
too.
read it in the bed at night, in
Yep.
the anywhere. You can hide it
Mhm.
at work and read it. It's amazing. But that's
Yeah,
another topic.
I know. I will say I have the Libby app and I love it.
Mm.
I love it connects to your library card. And so I can easily grab a book, or grab an audiobook. Like I'm listening. So our drive, where our property is like 3 hours away. And so for this weekend, I finally picked up Tom Felton's memoir called Beyond the Wand. And it's like how he joined Harry Potter and all these things.
Mhm.
And that's been the first book where I'm like, yes, this is great. But the only downside to Libby, at least with the Austin Library, is everything's got a hold. So I'm waiting to read all of these books and they're 8, 9, 12-week holds. I'm like, what do I read in the meantime?
Wow, wow.
So if
I
anyone
will
has
recommend.
suggestions of things to read, send me a DM.
I will send you some recommendations for sure, of some of my favorites. But my last question,
Yeah.
I have admired your body artwork from
Oh,
afar.
thank you. Thank
Tell us about, is there any significance about your artwork, body artwork? What should we know about your tattoos?
Oh my God. No one's ever asked me about my tattoos in a podcast episode. I love you right now. This is great. I will say nothing really has meaning. So
Okay.
I very much I have never waited to get a tattoo. I've literally like I'll be on Pinterest one night, I'll wake up the next day and it's like on my body type of thing. Because I think tattoos are a great representation of who you were when you got it. And so I look back and like, yeah, I don't love all my tattoos. I don't know anybody who actually loves their tattoos, all of them. But I do look back and I'm like, oh yeah, like that was really cool to get, or oh my God, I remember the pain of getting that. But I will say, to kind of make it a full circle conversation, I got this guy done. Oh God, when did I get it done? The year of COVID. I got it 2020 because I also got Edna flipping off the world. I got her done all at the same time. But really, what this one represents more so is like me embracing my demons, and also like, everybody's got their own shit, their own problems, and you just have to embrace who you are, whether it's the good or the bad. But it's funny. I find this really funny because everyone's like, why did you get Batman on your arm? Because if you look, like the devil kind of looks like Batman, like
Similarity,
like the
yeah.
horn things. I'm like, guys, it's not Batman. Like, I'm not really like a Marvel DC person. But then I will say I do love my T-Rex. I got a T-Rex a long time ago and I do
Ooh,
love
I
her.
see it. I see it.
Yeah. But I mean, I just have like crazy things. Like I've got a whole pirate tattoo. I've got all kinds of stuff. I think I have like 26 tattoos or something. I don't know. They're
Okay.
just
Is,
fun.
is it
They're
gonna
fun.
continue? Is it gonna continue?
Yeah, I have my whole top of my arm left, so I'll
Mhm.
put stuff there and like little pieces like on my elbow. But I'm not trying to be like totally tatted.
I
I think
see.
I
I
just
see.
like I piecemealed stuff for a long time, and I'm like, okay, I want to fill the holes and call it a day.
Beautiful.
And also get another
Beautiful.
hand tattoo because I love my snake.
I
So
see. I see.
yeah.
Fascinating. Sarah, any last words for the viewers and listeners of the show?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me on. I really loved our conversation when we first met, so that was great. But I think, yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this episode, you know, if it hasn't become clear, I'm a very transparent person. I love to chat. And so, you know, my lines of communication are always open, whether they're DMs or if you want to grab virtual coffee, or if you're in Austin and you want to get together, I'm always down. I'm always happy to give advice and to talk through things. For me, there's no such thing as a paywall necessarily. Like, my experience should be shared. And so if you have questions about our conversation today, or just like want to be my friend, just send me a DM. I'm a really nice person, I promise. But no, that's pretty much it. And I think, like, final words, you know, of advice is, you know, don't be too hard on yourself. You know, becoming a freelancer and even like shifting from one career to the next is very traumatizing and very overwhelming. And you know, I not that I love this phrase, but like, you got to give yourself grace, you know, and go with the flow, and remember that nothing is permanent. There's a few decisions you can make that are permanent, but you can always change. If you pick something and it doesn't work out, there's so many jobs that didn't exist 5-10 years ago that also too don't exist yet. So there are so many paths you can pick, and just to give yourself the opportunity to learn and the permission to explore, it's going to be great for you. So
there you go.
that's all
Permission
I
to
can say.
explore. I
Yes.
love it. Awesome. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your productivity. Have a great night.
Yeah, you guys too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efraín Martinez.
Chulo.
And as of that production, chill out.